8 years ago, a long time, that through that process, I had accepted the depression before then, but it still wasn't something I was comfortable talking about. I still felt a little bit of the stigma. I had felt that before, as the feeling that it somehow made me ungrateful, which of course is not the case. So anyway, that was a process for me, just to understand depression, accept it, and to be comfortable talking about it. And yes,
understood.
It's definitely been a process.
And it doesn't discriminate to anyone. Anyone can go through depression, especially even situational depression. You don't have to be clinically diagnosed with depression to have symptoms and to have it for a short term. A lot of times when there's chronic pain or chronic illness, back injuries, a lot of neurologists will prescribe antidepressants just because, even just to be preventative and have a safety net. They'll prescribe antidepressants for someone that's going through something that's so chronic pain, chronic illness, or anything, even if they're not at the time saying that they have symptoms of depression, but the neurologist will suggest that they start taking them just because it's very common that those things start to catch on. I mean, think about, of course, daily pain is going to get somebody irritable, and irritation. It's just going to a domino effect. So, so you found out that your daughter had been injured with a lifelong injury, and probably would never walk again. And then, but her attitude kept you inspired to keep going.
Right, and at first it was also the need to take care of her. I just felt like that was my reason to get up in the morning. I needed to do all I could to support her in her life.
And so, what did she start wanting to do? This is my favorite part.
Right. Yeah.
Now that you've been waiting, everyone, this is the part that gets good. Not the tragedy so much, but I mean, you got to start somewhere to show how far you guys came.
Right. Well, one of the first steps was finding the disability community and like a spinal cord injury group in Toledo, and connecting with really amazing people. But one thing that was pivotal, I guess, experience for Beth was swimming. She wasn't a swimmer after her accident, and it was just
after or before.
Oh, I'm sorry. She was not a swimmer before the accident.
Before. The water is great for the back too. It's one of the things we're allowed to do with back injury.
She started in water therapy, but was always pushing herself. She found freedom in the water at a time when it was really difficult to move on land.
Right.
And she loved it. So it took a long time, but she learned how to float on her back, which is still very difficult for most people with quadriplegia, and moving her arms underwater to move in the water. And I mean, I could talk for hours.
But I want you to get to the point.
Journey.
What happened? I'm just waiting patiently here. But I'm like, and Cindy? And?
Yes. Okay, she started swimming competitively. She swam on the U.S. Paralympic national team for 5 years and traveled the world. And
the Olympics. I just got chills when you said that, and I already knew what you were going to say. And I still got it.
And she was the first with a visible disability on the Harvard women's swimming and diving team. She also was the first in our family. Yeah, she was the first in our family to go to college out of state. We lived in Ohio, let alone Ivy League. That was really a big...
She's the first to go to college out of state, and she ends up at Harvard.
Yeah. Yep.
With a serious back injury, and with all of those challenges, and the story's not even over yet. This is just the beginning. This is what I love so much about your story, Cindy, and everything. I mean, it's still very, very sad that this all happened in the first place. It is. And I am so sorry that you guys had to go through that, but how you handled it is mind-blowing.
How
she
did.
That's what I mean.
It's more mind-blowing than how I
think
did.
It's both. I think it's both.
Well, thank you. But
So she ends up in the how do you say it, Paralympics?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
Paralympics.
then did she win medals?
Yes, she traveled a lot. Right. That. Right. I mean, I can tell you more about that too. But
she was swimming for Harvard, correct? Or she did the diving team
right,
at
the
Harvard?
Varsity team.
The
Right.
varsity
right.
Harvard team.
And,
so after the age of 14, serious car accident, she ends up, what you said, quadriplegic? I thought it was paralyzed.
In the neck. Mm-hmm. Right.
But she could still use her hands at times, right?
Well, she doesn't have hand function, but she can use her arm.
Okay.
She still uses her hands, but the fingers don't work.
Like the fine motor skills?
Right.
Fine
one
motor
finger
skills.
on one hand, she could move a little bit. And but she
things we take for
How,
granted.
oh, definitely, yeah. And it took her 4 years, but she was able to. She's now, and 4 years after her injury, was completely independent in her self-care, which
I'm sure you had a lot to do with that too, and her.
Well,
but.
Mostly her.
Right. Well,
yes.
I know you. Okay, so let's stop being modest here. We're wasting airtime. I'm gonna compliment you all I want. Okay, so she gets so obviously she got into Harvard as well, even finishing high school with these injuries and everything. Gets into Harvard and starts to study law. Yes, and all that time she's if she's around, she can call in too. And if anybody wants to get support,
yes.
866-826-1340.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm not sure she can today. She had a work meeting right at this time. But, yes, she went on to law school.
Always love hearing from Beth. Even if it's 5 minutes or whatever, that'd be great. But she went to law school. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Right. And she shares my passion for volunteering in the disability community. So now she's out doing a lot of. She's gone farther than I ever have with advocacy work. Her clients in pro bono work include companies and nonprofits in the disability community. And she's doing great. We're having fun with her wedding plans. She's getting married next month on May 18th here in D.C.
That is so great.
Yep. And she's
she's a nice guy. How do you like your son-in-law?
Yes, we love him. We love Dan. And she's just a happy person. She loves her life. And I read in the book, she just sees possibilities. She didn't see limits. She didn't accept society's limits on what someone with quadriplegia can do.
Right.
And I've always admired that and wished that I had more of that attitude and determination. And
I think we all want that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
But I mean, I hear it within you too, and don't even. You're not allowed to argue with the host. I hear it within you too.
Okay.
I think you're doing a great job, and you've always been very strong, and I think that's where you didn't seek help for yourself, for survivor guilt, depression, all of that, because you put her first,
exactly.
And then anybody would start pouring from an empty cup at that point. But the guilt, especially I can relate as a parent myself, that if it's hard enough to watch someone go through that, but if I felt like it was my fault, it's hard to. I mean, it's how do you even cope with that?
Right. Yeah. It took a long time to forgive myself.
And so, how did you get there?
Years of counseling, about 3 years of weekly counseling. And also, I think another big part of that healing process or that forgiveness process was seeing how good things were happening. That's part of the title with the book, Struggling with Serendipity.
For those that don't know, serendipity, what does that mean to you?
Right. To me, good things happening, fortunate accidents happening, things that are unexpected that happen. And many of those, the book is full of them. So things started happening. Yes, no, I'm not really. So soon after the accident, these things started happening, and I could see them, I could appreciate them, I could be grateful for these things happening in Beth's life, and but I was still struggling, and it took me a while to really be able to fully appreciate and forgive myself and move forward from that. But I don't want to negate Beth's part in that too. I mean, I think she also is a person who's open to opportunities and welcoming of opportunities, and she was able to find some of the serendipity, I guess.
Right, and see past the challenges, but what she could still do, and really strengthen that. And that's what's so great.
Right, that's the focus. Right.
So how did you revive from the guilt? I mean, you said years of therapy, but I mean,
right.
Where did you come? When was your moment of clarity, so to speak?
Right. Well, yeah. Exactly. I did have a moment of clarity. I write about that in the book too. We ended up doing a lot of traveling together with swimming, and one of the trips that we went on was for junior nationals, and it's a great competition of kids with all kinds of disabilities once a year, and they compete in many different sports. So we were on the East Coast for that, and one day we just went sightseeing, and we were on the coast in this beautiful little town, and we were just sitting there, and Beth wanted to sit in the sun, so she's sitting in the sun, and she's just tipping her face up to the sun. And it just kind of struck me like, everything really is okay. Like she told me the night of the accident. Because
that's amazing that she looked over at you and just said, "Everything's going to be okay, Mom." And just
yes, yeah.
And the car was flipped over, right?
Right. She's upside down in the car, and she's telling me this. Yeah, I But
it's almost like an angel coming down
really
and telling
well.
you everything's going to be okay. But it's your teenager.
Right.
That's amazing for a 14-year-old to come to that. Because mine only says me, and I, or something. I don't know.
Oh, well, she was a typical teenager in a lot of ways, too. But, and she teases, she's written quite a bit about it, and I include that in my book. And one of the things she kind of jokes about, just, well, yeah, I'm sure I was in shock at that time, like the night of the accident, when she's saying things like...
I didn't mean that, Mom. No. Don't feel reassured. It's not okay.
No, but she did. But honestly, she did feel that everything was going to be okay.
Yes, it's an automatic response, which shows like her subconscious is automatically optimistic. That's really a good thing. Right. I mean, and then she still managed to get, so she was 14, she must have been a freshman or sophomore, and she managed to graduate high school and get into Harvard, even with all those medical issues and learning to learn to live with these new challenges. And
a lot of therapy, physical therapy.
Learning how to eat again or brush your teeth or any of that while studying. And still getting grades good enough to get into Harvard Law School. It's mind-blowing. Who does that? Is she from Earth? No, seriously.
I know, sometimes. But there were things that were very typical teenage too. One thing that bothered her more than other things that she couldn't do right after her injury was she couldn't put her hair up in a ponytail. And
it's not easy to do when you have a cut on your finger. Just saying.
Exactly. And, we tried everything. She worked with occupational therapists, tried to help her. But, most of us, I would have given up after, trying for days or weeks or whatever. Well, she tried every day. So every day before she wanted her hair up, she tried herself several times before she'd hand me the elastic.
Now, for those tuning in, she was a quadriplegic, meaning arm movement, no hand movement, though, and in a wheelchair.
Yeah, she has hand movement. I mean, through her wrist, she can move her hand, and but the fingers don't work independently. but they're still amazing